They assumed Ozzy Osbourne left $0. The truth was hidden under the plate. The waiter stood there, staring at the empty table, his lips curling into a smirk. "No tip," he said loudly. $0. A few people nearby turned to look. Someone chuckled. Someone else shook their head. In a restaurant where tips were a status symbol, this felt like a public verdict. Just moments earlier, the man at that table had quietly finished his meal. No complaints. No demands. No arrogance. Jeans slightly faded. An old jacket draped over his shoulders. No flashy watch, no entourage. Ozzy Osbourne. But no one seemed to care who he was. The waiter scoffed, lifting the receipt for others to see. "Guess legends don't tip anymore," he joked. A couple of staff members laughed under their breath. What they didn't notice was how calm Ozzy looked as he stood up. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He didn't turn back to defend himself. He simply adjusted his jacket, placed the plate back exactly where it was, and walked away. To the staff, it was just another story to tell. Another reminder of how appearances can deceive, or so they thought. Rich restaurant, cheap customer, someone whispered. But there was something strange about the way Ozzy left. No rush, no embarrassment, no anger, just a faint smile, the kind that makes you wonder if you missed something important. As the waiter reached out to clear the table, another server hesitated. "Wait," she said softly. "Did anyone actually check under the plate?" The waiter laughed. "What, you think he hid money like a movie scene?" But something about the moment felt wrong, because people who leave nothing usually look guilty, or defensive, or annoyed. Ozzy looked none of those things. He looked certain that the truth didn't need to be loud, certain that respect didn't need applause, certain that what was hidden would speak louder than words. The waiter rolled his eyes and grabbed the plate. And in the next few seconds, everything inside that restaurant was about to change, because what they assumed was nothing was actually worth more than they could imagine. And it was sitting right there, hidden under the plate. The restaurant was everything money could buy: marble floors, soft golden lights, glasses polished to a mirror shine. Every table whispered luxury. This was the kind of place where reservations were made weeks in advance, and first impressions decided how you were treated. It was a busy night. Waiters moved fast, memorizing faces, scanning outfits, silently ranking customers by the size of their watches and the labels on their jackets. Regulars were greeted by name. Big spenders were smiled at before they even sat down. Then Ozzy Osbourne walked in. No announcement. No bodyguards. No spotlight, just a quiet step through the door, like someone who didn't need permission to exist. The host glanced at him, hesitated, then forced a polite smile. "Table for one?" she asked, already unsure. Ozzy nodded. They seated him near the side. Not the best view, not the worst either. A place meant to be forgotten. The kind of table given to someone who didn't look like they'd stay long. As he sat, nearby diners whispered, "Is that? No, couldn't be. He doesn't look like money." The waiter assigned to him noticed the jacket first, old faded, then the shoes, clean, but simple. No designer logos screaming for attention. The waiter sighed. Great. Another customer who'd ask for everything and leave nothing. "Water?" the waiter asked, tone flat. "Yes, please," Ozzy replied softly, no attitude, no ego, no name dropping. As the menu was placed in front of him, Ozzy didn't rush. He read slowly, carefully, like someone enjoying the moment rather than proving a point. When he ordered, it was simple. One main dish, no extras, no wine. The waiter raised an eyebrow that confirmed it. Throughout the meal, Ozzy remained quiet. He thanked the waiter every time a plate was placed down. He smiled at the server who refilled his glass. When another guest bumped into his chair, Ozzy apologized, even though it wasn't his fault. The staff noticed and misunderstood it. Trying too hard. One of them whispered near the bar. Probably wants people to think he's humble. But humility, when misunderstood, often looks like weakness. Behind the counter, the manager glanced over. "Who's that?" he asked. Just some guy, the waiter replied. Doesn't look like much. The manager nodded and looked away. More important tables needed attention. Louder voices, bigger orders. As dessert was offered, Ozzy politely declined. Just the check, please. The waiter placed the bill down with a practiced motion, already calculating disappointment. When Ozzy finished, he folded the receipt carefully. He didn't rush. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He stood, pushed his chair in, and placed the plate exactly where it had been before. Neat, intentional. Then he did something small. Something easy to miss. He slid something beneath the plate. Not quickly, not secretly. Just calmly. The waiter didn't notice. No one did. Ozzy adjusted his jacket, gave a soft nod toward the staff, and walked toward the exit. The same way he had entered, quietly. Behind him, judgment filled the air. Assumptions settled in. Smiles turned into smirks. They thought the story was already over. But in truth, it hadn't even begun. The moment Ozzy walked out, the waiter moved fast. He didn't even wait for the door to close behind him. With a sharp pull, he snatched the receipt from the table and glanced at the total. His eyes skimmed the numbers once. Then again, his lips tightened. No tip. Not a single dollar. He let out a short laugh loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Unbelievable, he said, shaking his head. Saturday here for over an hour, and left nothing. A couple at the next table glanced over. One of them raised an eyebrow. Seriously? The man asked. The waiter held up the receipt like evidence. Zero, not even a courtesy tip. A few staff members nearby leaned in. Someone scoffed. Someone else laughed under their breath. Told you. Another waiter said, people like that always do this. The words people like that hung in the air, vague, judgmental, and cruel. The waiter began clearing the table aggressively now. Plates clinked louder than necessary. Cutlery scraped against porcelain. Each movement carried frustration, like the customer had personally insulted him. You know what's funny? He continued, raising his voice just enough. They're always the politist ones. Always saying thank you, always smiling. He mimicked Ozzy's calm tone. Yes, please. No, thank you. A few chuckles followed. Act humble, he added. Then walk out without paying respect. Across the room, a server frowned. He did pay the bill, though, she said quietly. The waiter shot her a look. The manager overheard as he passed by. He stopped, glanced at the receipt, then shrugged. Some people just don't belong in places like this, he said casually. Clear the table. That was all the permission the waiter needed. He lifted the plate roughly, ready to dump it onto his tray, and then he paused. Something slid slightly. A soft sound. Paper against ceramic. The waiter frowned. What the? He looked down. Under the plate, something was folded. Not trash. Not a napkin. Paper. The laughter behind him faded as curiosity spread. A few staff members leaned closer. One customer nearby stopped mid-conversation. The waiter slowly picked it up. It was a receipt. Not the bill receipt. Another one. He unfolded it. His eyes widened, then widened more. The number written at the bottom didn't make sense at first. His brain rejected it. He blinked, leaned closer, ran his finger across the ink as if it might disappear. It didn't. The tip was more than he made in a month. His mouth went dry. Someone behind him whispered, "What is it?" The waiter didn't answer. His face drained of color as the room seemed to tilt. The jokes he had just made echoed back in his head, louder now, crueler. The server who had defended Ozzy stepped closer and read it too. "Oh my God," she whispered. The manager returned, annoyed. "What's taking so long?" The waiter handed him the receipt with shaking hands. The manager read it once. Then again. His expression changed instantly. The smugness vanished. The confidence cracked. "Where did this come from?" he asked sharply. The waiter swallowed. From the table. Silence spread across the restaurant. A customer nearby spoke up. "So he did tip?" The waiter couldn't speak. Because it wasn't just a tip. Written beneath the amount was a short note. 5 words. Sharp, calm, unforgiving. Never mistake silence for weakness. The manager looked toward the door. Ozzy was already gone. And suddenly, every assumption felt ugly. Every laugh felt loud. Every word spoken behind his back felt heavy. The waiter sank into a chair, receipt still trembling in his hand. He hadn't just misjudged a customer. He had exposed himself. And the worst part, the man they mocked never said a single word. He didn't need to, because the truth he left behind was louder than any argument. And it was only the beginning of what that receipt would change. The restaurant, once filled with clinking glasses and low conversations, felt hollow, like the air itself had been pulled out of the room. Every sound now felt too loud, a chair scraping, a fork dropping, a nervous cough. The waiter still sat frozen, staring at the receipt in his hands as if it might suddenly accuse him out loud. The manager broke the silence first. "Are you sure this is real?" he asked, lowering his voice, though everyone nearby could hear the panic in it. The waiter nodded slowly. "I watched him place the plate," he said. "I just didn't think to check under it." Didn't think. That sentence hung heavy around them. Staff members exchanged looks, not amused anymore, not smug, uneasy, embarrassed. Some stared at the floor, others pretended to wipe already clean tables. A woman at a nearby table leaned toward her husband. "So all that laughing," she whispered, "was for nothing," he replied. The young server, the one who had spoken up earlier, crossed her arms. "He thanked us," she said quietly, "for everything." The words hit harder than the note. The manager rubbed his temple, suddenly very aware of how many customers were watching. Phones were subtly lifted, whispers grew sharper. "Did you hear what they said about him? They mocked him. He left more than anyone tonight." Every sentence felt like a mirror being held up. The waiter swallowed hard, his throat burned. "I didn't know," he muttered. The server looked at him. "You didn't ask either." That stung. He replayed the night in his head now. Every smile he'd ignored. Every thank you he'd brushed off. Every joke he'd made behind Ozzy's back. They didn't sound harmless anymore. They sounded cruel. The manager straightened his jacket, trying to regain control. "All right," he said sharply. "This stays professional. Clear the tables." But professionalism couldn't erase shame. At the bar, 2 regular customers shook their heads. "That man showed more class walking out than half the people in here," one said, near the entrance. The host kept glancing at the door. "He didn't even look angry," she said softly. "That's the worst part." The waiter stood up slowly, legs weak. Should we try to find him?" he asked. The manager hesitated. "Find him and say what?" "Sorry we judged you. Sorry we laughed. Sorry we only respected you once we saw numbers." Before he could answer, the door opened. Everyone turned instinctively, but it wasn't Ozzy. It was a delivery man. Ordinary, forgettable. The collective breath released was almost audible. Disappointment mixed with relief. The server folded her arms tighter. "He didn't leave that money to be thanked," she said. "He left it to teach something." The waiter looked down at the note again. Never mistake silence for weakness. It burned now. Across the room, a customer raised his glass slightly toward the empty table Ozzy had sat at. "Class act," he said. A few others nodded. The manager exhaled slowly, his confidence completely gone. "We need to be better," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Outside, through the glass doors, the black street reflected faint lights. Somewhere beyond that reflection, Ozzy Osbourne was already gone, untouched by the chaos he left behind. Inside, the restaurant tried to return to normal, but it couldn't, because once you see your own arrogance clearly, there's no pretending it didn't exist. The waiter carefully folded the receipt and slipped it into his pocket, like a reminder he didn't deserve to forget. He thought the night was over. He was wrong, because while they were still processing the lesson, someone else was already on their way. And when they arrived, the quiet shame inside that restaurant would turn into something far louder. The first sign that something was about to change came from outside. A low engine, hummed smooth, controlled, expensive. A few diners near the window glanced up as a black luxury car rolled to a stop right in front of the restaurant. Not flashy, not loud, the kind of vehicle that didn't need attention to command it. The host noticed first. She straightened instinctively. The doors opened. 2 men stepped out, dressed sharply, carrying leather folders. Their movements were quick, purposeful, not the kind of people who waited to be acknowledged. The restaurant doors swung open. Conversations died mid-sentence. One of the men scanned the room once, then spoke clearly and calmly. "Good evening. We're looking for the manager." Every eye turned. The manager froze. "Yes, that's me," he said, stepping forward, suddenly aware of his wrinkled confidence. "Is there a problem?" The man glanced at his watch. "We were expecting Mr. Osbourne to still be here." The name landed heavy, not whispered, not joked about. Spoken with respect. The manager's face drained. "Ozzy Osbourne," he repeated, slowly. The man nodded. "Yes, he dined here about 30 minutes ago." Silence slammed into the room. The waiter felt his chest tighten. That name, the same one they had mocked, judged, dismissed, now sounded different. Bigger, heavier, real. The manager cleared his throat. He already left." The second man frowned slightly. "That's unfortunate." He opened his folder and pulled out a document. "Mr. Osbourne recently partnered with several hospitality investors. This restaurant is one of the locations under review." Under review. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. "You see," the man continued, voice even, "Mr. Osbourne believes the true measure of a place isn't its food, but how it treats people who don't look powerful." The waiter's legs went weak. The manager stammered. "There must be some mistake. There isn't," the man interrupted gently. "He came in exactly as he intended." The second man looked around the room. He wanted to see how respect was given when no one thought it mattered. The server, the one who had defended Ozzy, felt a chill. The manager swallowed hard. Did he say anything? The first man's lips tightened. He didn't need to. He reached into his jacket and placed a card on the counter. "Mr. Osbourne asked us to collect feedback. From staff, from guests." A customer spoke up without hesitation. He was polite, calm, classy. Another added, "Your staff laughed at him." The words cut clean. The waiter stared at the floor. The man nodded slowly, writing something down. "Thank you." Then he turned back to the manager. "One more thing," he said. "He left a tip." The manager nodded quickly. "Yes, we found it." "No," the man corrected softly. "He left a message." He quoted it without looking at the paper. "Never mistake silence for weakness." Every single person felt it. The second man closed his folder. "Mr. Osbourne won't be returning tonight," he said. "But changes will be made." The manager's voice cracked. "Can I speak to him?" The answer came immediately. Number. That one word echoed louder than any shout. The men turned toward the exit. As they walked out, the room remained frozen, like everyone had just witnessed something irreversible. The power had shifted. The laughter was gone. The arrogance evaporated. Only understanding remained. The waiter finally sank into a chair. He hadn't just misjudged a guest. He had failed a test. Moan that was never announced. Never explained. Never repeated. And somewhere out there, Ozzy Osbourne was already moving on, leaving behind a restaurant that would never forget the night they mistook humility for weakness. The restaurant didn't return to normal that night. Even after the executives left, even after the doors closed again, something had shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was heavier than that. The manager stood behind the counter, staring at nothing. For the first time since he'd taken the job, he didn't look in control. His shoulders slumped. His voice, when he finally spoke, was lower than anyone had ever heard it. "Everyone," he said, clearing his throat. "Staff meeting now." The waiters gathered slowly. No jokes, no side conversations, just quiet footsteps and uneasy faces. The manager looked around at them, really looked this time. We failed tonight, he said. No one argued. We judged someone by how they looked, he continued. And we embarrassed ourselves because of it. His eyes landed on the waiter who had mocked Ozzy. You, he said calmly. Step forward. The waiter did. Gone was the confidence. Gone were the jokes. He looked smaller somehow, like the room had finally caught up to him. You didn't break a rule, the manager said, but you broke something more important. The waiter swallowed. I know, he said quietly. I was wrong. The manager nodded once. Starting tomorrow, you'll be reassigned. No floor service training shift only. It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The lesson was already learned. Then the manager turned toward the young server, the one who had defended Ozzy. You spoke up, he said. You treated him with respect when no one else did. She hesitated. I just did my job. No, the manager replied. You did more than that. He paused, then said the words that surprised everyone. Effective immediately, you'll be leading the floor during evening service. Her eyes widened. Are you serious? Yes, he said, because leadership isn't about authority, it's about character. A few staff members nodded slowly. The waiter looked down, not bitter, just thoughtful. After the meeting, customers continued eating, but conversations stayed softer. People tipped more, they smiled more. A few even thanked the staff out loud, as if they too had learned something. Later that night, the waiter stood alone near the now empty table where Ozzy had sat. The plate had been cleaned, the chair pushed in. No sign of the moment that had changed everything, except for the receipt. He unfolded it one last time and read the note again. Never mistake silence for weakness. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Somewhere across the city, Ozzy Osbourne was probably already home, or on the road, or nowhere anyone could point to on a map. He hadn't stayed to watch the consequences. He hadn't demanded apologies. He hadn't asked for recognition. He never needed to. Because the most powerful lessons don't come with speeches. They come quietly. They sit with you. They change how you treat the next person who walks through the door. And from that night on, everyone in that restaurant knew one thing for certain. Respect doesn't belong to the rich. It belongs to everyone. By the next morning, the restaurant looked the same. Sami lights, Sami polished floors, Sami menu printed in gold lettering. But the people inside were different. The staff moved with a new awareness, not rushed, not careless. They made eye contact now. They listened. They smiled without calculating what someone might leave behind. Because one quiet man had walked in, said very little, and walked out having said everything. No one talked about the money anymore. Not the size of the tip, not the number written on the receipt. What stayed was the feeling, the uncomfortable realization that respect had been delayed, and that delay had revealed something ugly. The truth is, Ozzy Osbourne didn't teach them anything new. He reminded them of something they already knew, and forgot. That kindness isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. We live in a world where people are measured before they speak, where clothes, posture, and silence are mistaken for worth, where humility is often confused with weakness. And how often does that cost us? How many times do we dismiss someone quietly sitting in the corner? How many times do we laugh because we think no one important is listening? How many times do we offer respect only after we see numbers, titles, or names? That night was a mirror. And not everyone liked what they saw. Ozzy didn't raise his voice. He didn't correct anyone. He didn't expose anyone publicly. He let their own behavior do that. Because real power doesn't announce itself. It observes. Real generosity doesn't perform. It teaches. And real class doesn't need recognition. It leaves a lesson behind. Somewhere out there, someone is sitting quietly right now, being underestimated, overlooked, judged for reasons that say nothing about who they really are. They might not correct you. They might not defend themselves. They might not reveal who they are. But one day, the truth will surface. And when it does, the question won't be who they were. It will be who you were to them. So the next time someone walks into your space, a restaurant, a store, an office, your life, don't wait for proof to offer respect. Give it freely. Because respect given late isn't respect at all. It's regret. If this story made you pause, even for a second, if it reminded you to be a little kinder, a little slower to judge, type respect in the comments and tell me, where are you watching from? Let's remind the world that humility is still strength, and that the quietest people often leave the loudest lessons behind.